Meeting is now called to order. We want to welcome everybody here this morning, bright and early, 8:30. You're up and at 'em. We're glad to see you. So happy and active to be out. Excited about the day. So we're here to talk about fire tax. First two items on our agenda today. So we've got the Marion Fire Department. We have Bob Boyette. Good to have Bob, City Manager, with us today, and Ray, the new chief. Congratulations on your new position. We're happy for you guys. So Bob, come on up.
Appreciate the opportunity to present to y'all today. Hope everybody's doing well. I sent Ashley on May 7th a letter making the request. And I don't know if you have that exact letter in your packet. I'll start by talking from that. The request is for an increase in the Marion Area Fire District tax rate from 6 cents to 8 cents. And the reason being for mainly staffing reasons. We hired just a couple of months ago an additional full-time firefighter and are proposing to hire at least two full-time and firefighters in the upcoming budget starting July 1 and a part-time position at the fire department. If a grant that we've applied for is approved, we'll go beyond that. Instead of hiring 2 new ones, we'll be hiring 5 new ones. That would be the hope. So we'll either be at 2 firefighters per shift or 3 firefighters per shift. And that's based on a study that we had done of comparable sized cities a few months ago. And to say that we're woefully behind in staffing would be an understatement. We're right now at 1.33 positions per shift. The average of cities in the 5 to 10,000 population was 4.5 per shift. We were shocked by those numbers, and we appreciate incoming Chief McDowell for bringing that to our attention. It's becoming, in modern society, it's becoming increasingly difficult to recruit and retain volunteers. People are busy. Employers are not as willing to let people volunteer, and we will always be relying on volunteers, but we realize we've got to up the full-time staffing to meet the increased call demands, the increased workload that the fire service is being called on to perform. We also try to, Ashley and I talked about making sure that we are funding things equitably, and we looked at the call volume for calendar year 2018, and the call volume is split almost exactly 50-50 between the city and the Marion Area Fire District. By having the 2-cent fire district tax increase and taking on these additional expenditures, along with some capital outlay, which Ray can mention some of the things that we're doing there. Turnout gear, we've just purchased a Jaws for Life to get into the extrication business, but that would maintain the funding on a 50-50 basis. So the city is doing its part too, not just asking the district. So, Mayor Little is here, and I'd like to ask him to speak a little bit if he'd be willing to.
We would appreciate very much your consideration on this. Historically, over the last several years, the fire departments throughout the county have needed some additional revenue so that they can maintain their ability to respond, and we're just in the same situation. We need that increased ability to respond. The difference between having firefighters at the station when the call comes in is dramatic. It could mean the difference in saving someone's home or someone's business, and that's just incumbent upon us to need to do that, and that costs revenue. But when you consider the area served with the density of population, the density of residences, the density of businesses, then the ratio certainly supports, I would contend, a 2-cent increase, so that the percentage of served homes and businesses and people within the Marion area and Marion districts, there's just a lot more value that's there, a lot more opportunity for tragic circumstances. One of the few drawbacks of being in a tightly dense area is fire, because fire spreads. The fire that devastated downtown Marion a little over 100 years ago is the perfect example. If there'd been an acre between each building, or 5 acres between the buildings, there'd have been one fire, one building. But it wasn't. It was dense, and it spread, and it did everything. It just destroyed everything on the south end of town because the winds were blowing toward the south, which is sort of odd because they usually blow toward the north. But on that occasion, blowing toward the south, and everything south of Court Street was destroyed. So anyway, that's part of the reason for our request. So we appreciate your consideration for doing this so that we can continue to serve the folks that we need to serve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's always
Thank you.
good to
Thank
see
you.
our good friend, the mayor, Mr. Steve Little, with us.
I'll just mention also as an aside, there will be soon, and you may know all about this, UNC Television is doing a special program on Marion and McDowell County. And there was an interviewer and a videographer up yesterday. He interviewed Mike Conley, interviewed me, and of course I spent probably as much time talking about the county as a whole as I did Marion. So I will let you know when we find out. They didn't know yesterday when it's going to be aired, but
You'll read about it in the McDowell news.
oh, there you go.
And he said they're going to come back too and do more.
Good.
And Incoming Chief McDaniel, you want to shed some more light on some of the things that have been done?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak and stand before you, and I want to say I appreciate our past working relationship that we've had as me being assistant chief, and I look forward to moving in the future and having the same and great relationship. I want to give a few items here that we discussed at our last meeting where we all met together at the Fire Commission meeting. In 2018, we run 970 calls from the Marion Fire Department. In 2008, we run 500 calls. In 2018, we had 19 volunteers. In 2008, we had 32 volunteers. And nationwide, this is not just McDowell County or City of Marion, but nationwide, the volunteers and people being able to volunteer is going down. We're trying to recruiting and retention, and that's hard to do. But it's also hard to get someone to risk their life on a volunteer basis. Like Bob said, we've applied for that SAFER grant, and we're hoping to get that, to get our staffing up to 3 per shift. And when I say per shift, I mean 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. What we're hoping to do is get 2 engines and a ladder out all the time, 100% of the time, with paid staff. Getting those trucks out helps us reduce the insurance rate for the Marion area and the Marion City. And that's one of the goals that I want to do, is try to get that rate as low as possible. I want to get that rate low to where you know, we're looking and saying, okay, we're going to have to spend big money just to save someone just a few $100s on their insurance, or even $100 on their insurance. So we want to lower that as much as possible. And with this new staff and our extra staffing that we can get, we can do some more in-depth training and get full credit on that Department of Insurance rating. We can do our hydrant testing, maintenance, and inspection. It's going to give us full credit on that rating, and also do more fire prevention program that's also credit towards lowering that rating. So that's some of the things that we want to do with this extra staff, and not counting the safety aspect of it. Being able to send people in with 2 in and 2 out, and what that is having 2 firefighters go inside a building, make an attack on a fire to put the fire out, and having 2 people on the outside as a safety. So the main important thing and most important is the safety aspect of it, making sure that we have enough people on scene immediately to get the job done. And now, if you have any questions for me, I'm willing to accept any questions and help you out with answering them the best I can.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ray.
And on that, we have our Assistant City Manager, Finance Director, Julie Shear. Anything to add, Julie?
I think everything's been said.
We appreciate y'all's consideration, and as Ray, you can see why we're excited about the future of our fire department with Ray coming in with his vision and experience, and I think our best days are ahead. We're going to get that rating lowered even more and have some great days ahead. But be happy to answer any questions, but otherwise we appreciate what y'all do to help us, and would appreciate your consideration.
Okay, Bob, thanks so much.
Thank you.
We're so glad y'all are here, and thank you for the information and good information. Fire Commission meeting the other night and again here today. And we appreciate the mayor being here and Bob being here, and also the your official title again was the
Assistant City Manager.
there you go. You heard it straight from her. All right, so glad you're here too. At this time, Ms. Wood, anything else you need to add?
Not so much. You've got a great overview from city manager there as far as what they would do. You've heard the statements. Again, it's going from, the request is to go from 6 to 8 cents. And I think everyone's clear here that this is different than our next guests, and that the city taxpayers pay for city fire protection inside the city. And then the expectation is that the county taxpayers, via the service district tax, pay in the Marion area. So it's a little bit different from the next. But and again, we've always looked at population and tax base, and they're pretty close as far as being equal. So pretty good presentation. We do have the printout from the most recent year that's been submitted. And I calculated based on 2011 values, maybe about an additional 94,000 would come in. Is that roughly about right, the 2011 values? Okay, maybe this probably has a little bit extra in there, but the 2019 values will be a little bit different too. So.
Okay. So what we're doing, so everybody knows, we've got to adopt the budget by when? July 30th?
Ideally,
June
you
30th?
set rates before, sooner rather than later. There's a process with our vehicle tax system that we have to notify them as soon as possible on any rate changes. So as soon as you have that in mind, the better, because
Okay.
for some reason they get ahead of most budget adoptions, and they like us to have those rates in as soon as possible for
Okay.
the next billing. It could delay billing the longer we wait to set a rate. Sooner the better.
You need action on that this morning?
I'm not ready.
Okay,
Just want to vote, you know, I want to look at it.
okay.
All right, so what we'll do, we'll look at this and review it when we do the Town of Old Forts, and our next meeting is when, Ashley?
The only other next scheduled meeting is June 10th, but if you'd like to have workshops before then to talk about the budget.
Yeah,
and
we
everything else.
need to do that, that way they can go ahead and move forward, both of them, okay? All right, we'll go ahead and get a date scheduled, and we'll go ahead and review it then for you, okay? Thank you, guys. Chief? Yes, sir.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. This is for Old Fort Fire Department. I have two of our officers, Captain Morgan Lewis, Captain Brandon Freeman with me. And we are looking for a 3 cents increase to our OF district and a 2 cents increase to the Old Fort City residents. I'll make a few remarks from same as our last meeting when we were together last month. Our department now, we ran 1,112 calls last year. 39% of those are medical. We're getting more and more calls on I-40, which is just more and more traffic volume. more wrecks, more fires, more hazmat spills. And when we were at the last wreck at the 78-mile marker, where we had a tractor and trailer that overturned, hit the median, overturned, caught fire, and I was talking to Robert Denny with DOT, and he and I shared those same concerns and had the same opinion that the traffic count has just gotten tremendous on Interstate 40 in the last few years. And I would hope that DOT or someone do a study to verify that, but we all travel those roads and it just seems like it's what's going on. It doesn't look like there's any sign of it letting up. And those traveling motorists, a lot of them are not from around here, so no, they don't pay taxes, but we still have to cover that. We still have to respond to that, which uses up a lot of trucks, a lot of fuel, and wear and tear. And in our department, we're getting more and more industrial fires also. We have 32 volunteer members. We've got 6 part-time, daytime that work 6:30 to 3:30, 1 man per shift. We're currently working on our water point certifications to get our district re-rate this year. We're hoping DOI will be coming to see us toward the end of the year. And that would get that Class 9 district rating down from a 9, hopefully, to a 6 or 5 or at least. Our fire department has run for many, many years as a split district, 6 for the city, 6 for properties that are within 1,000 feet of a hydrant that are outside the city. But all the other area of the 5-mile district is a Class 9, and there is a big, big difference in the insurance rates between a 9 and a 6 or a 5. So we're confident, as other departments have done, that this tax increase would be more than offset by insurance savings from the homeowners, the people who are paying for homeowner insurance and other property insurance. And we held off from asking for this last year, partly for that. We wanted to get this district re-rate in place, or at least be close to it, so that they could be looking for some offsetting expenses. We upgraded an old F-550 Ford service rescue that's on an ambulance type body that was overloaded and having a lot of mechanical problems. It was a 2000 model. So last year we upgraded that with a 2004 Pierce Heavy Rescue that's just like new. We got it from a department up in Pennsylvania with only 12,000 miles on it. And it's a 49,800 GVW. And we've got our equipment on it now. And we got that truck for about $160,000. It would have, to replace it would be $500,000 or maybe more. It's got way more capacity, more tools, and that is used, runs these Interstate 40 calls regularly to wrecks, rescue, extrication, hazmat, water rescue, which actually today, it's the anniversary. May 30th, a year ago, was a water rescue that some of our personnel were involved with on Catawba River, and had 2 individuals pulled from the river, which and the other thing about this truck, it has a 7-man cab, so or 7-person cab that with air conditioning provides a rehab ability. We are needing to replace a 39-year-old fire engine. It's a 1980 cab-over Ford gas engine with hydraulic brakes. that is not roadworthy, requires a lot of work to keep it in force, in service. It still passes the pump test, so we're still getting credit for it. But the question is whether we can get it to a fire. It's in the shop right now getting brakes worked on. So the the increase we're asking for, the way we figured it is about $48,000 that would do for us on the district, 3 cents, and then 2 cents with the city would get us about $21,000. And the reason for the difference on that, our call volume we run right now, it's averages 23% of our runs are inside the city, meaning 77% of them are outside the city. So it seems more fair to justify more revenue come from the district outside the city than for the property owners inside the city. We don't know what to reval, how that would affect us. Ethan Allen is another hit that our community is taking, and I'm sure they still have to have the property valuation on the building, but I know the inventory will be down a lot, and then employment for local folks. So, you know, indirectly, perhaps that still comes back on our community. And that's about what I've got prepared. You guys have anything to add?
No, well, when he speaks of replacing apparatus, that particular fire engine, to replace it right now, to look at somewhere around $690,000 is what we're looking at. That's to replace it with equivalent, somewhere around between the $600,000 and $690,000 range to purchase a new apparatus put on the road.
It's just dramatic. It's what's going on the last 10, 15 years in the pricing of equipment. Fire trucks, ambulances, and you see that all the time, I'm sure. So, and we don't know how that. We got this rescue truck it's secondhand, and there's more of a used fire truck market out there now. That's getting better, but you have to really pick and search. 2 of them flew up to Pennsylvania to check that truck before we ever made a decision on it. With the internet and the way these dealers operate, you can do a lot of research that you couldn't have done 10 years ago when you're trying to find something, because it much does make it better. Morgan works full-time at Inca Fire Department, which is the busiest department in Buncombe County, busier than a lot of the Asheville departments. And so he knows firsthand the numbers on what these replacing the fire engine is. That's something that's out there. This will get us started in that direction. Any questions?
All right, Chief, we'll be in touch with you when we meet and vote on this item for you. It should be fairly soon. Thanks, sir. Thanks for being here today. All right, Mr. Wooten. Now, we're ready to move on to the budget.
We are. I don't know if you need to take a recess or if you want to go straight into it.
All right, well, what time we advertise? 9 o'clock start this, or was there
Well,
something?
we started at 8:30 with the advertisement, so if you wanted to take a break or...
Take a 5-minute recess till 9 o'clock. Okay, after a brief recess, the Board of Commissioners are back in session. We're here today to have the presentation of the budget recommendation by Mr. Wooten. So this time I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Wooten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to present a culmination of, maybe about 4 months worth of work. a lot of that has, we'll have to give credit to our finance director, Ms. Bell. She doesn't get the joy of presenting the budget recommendation, but her fingerprints are all over this, and wouldn't be able to be here today without her help and support, and good counsel on a lot of the things that are in here. And so just a brief discussion of the process. There's some discussions in here, but this is something that again takes 4 or 5 months to put together. This is not, and I've said this before in prior presentations, and managers say this is not Mr. Wooten's, Ashley Wooten's opinions, hopes, and dreams. This is what staff hears from the board as far as your priorities, and we're trying to make those priorities fit into the resources available. So hopefully this reflects the board's priorities. Maybe it doesn't always reflect one or the other, but as a whole, hopefully it does reflect that. And fortunately for you, you have the opportunity after today to say, we don't like this, and we're going to throw it in the trash can and start over, or make adjustments to however best reflect your priorities if we have not met those to your liking. So with that, we'll get started. And if you have questions, thoughts, opinions, please stop me, and it's not on any sort of time or anything. So. I've had this in here for a couple of years. This is a professor I had at Appalachian, and it's a very basic statement. This is from a budgeting class that he gave us, but budgeting is all about choices. That is hard to explain sometimes to folks, either internally, externally. It doesn't matter that, we as staff and you as a board have to make choices as to what priorities are, maybe giving more money over others. It isn't about who we like more. It isn't whatever is politically expedient or whatever. It's just some priorities come in front of others sometimes. But again, very simple, but that's what it really boils down to. So this is our organization. Hopefully you all know that, but we did make, Mr. DePoyster is here, so we have our Public Services Director listed in there, so he's doing a great job there. So getting into the actual budget, and so most people know that, we have a sheriff's office, we have registered deeds, we have all these great departments that we fund as part of our operation. Some are state mandated, some are optional. Some of these are state mandated and some are not, but these are all external agencies that either, like the school system, the college, maybe a few others like the Forest Service, you're required to fund. At what level is sort of at your discretion, but health district is in here as well. But a lot of these are optional. At some point, either the current board or prior boards have said, you know what, we see a benefit to have a healthy and vibrant Chamber of Commerce that can help advocate for economic development in this community. So let's provide some level of funding to that agency. The same goes for the Health Coalition. Via Health is a mandated, but some of these entities that aren't necessarily required that you provide funding, they still provide a public service that you otherwise cannot provide. So just a quick overview of the current year, some of the accomplishments that you have had this year we worked on. Our transit department started on August 1st. This was a culmination of many, many years, going back to the prior county manager, many prior boards of making that a priority to get that transit system and department up and running on its own. And so this goes back to studies this board has requested probably 5 or 7 years ago, and from the state, and finally took off within the last couple of years. So definitely a lot of credit for sticking to that. And so we've been in getting up and going and transitioning and learning all about DOT regulations and those sorts of things. New vehicles will be delivered in the next couple of weeks. I believe 2 or 3 this year. We've got 5 in next year's budget that are already approved. So you'll see, the public will see as well the turnover of the fleet and the new route and so forth in place. And
How close to being self-sufficient? I know we just started it, but where are we at with that? How much
we've
money,
got a ways to go on that.
How much money additional are we pumping into that every year now? Over what we projected?
Next year,
Next year's close to 200,000.
it'll take a while, and we hopefully made that clear that implementing that sort of function, it takes time to build up the infrastructure. Because essentially you went from
153,000 is our share next year. 153,578.
So we're reducing it.
No, it's an increase.
It's an increase. You had a function in the Department of Social Services that had some of that revenue, if not a lot of it, for administrative costs covered by federal and state reimbursement. Now with it being on its own, that reimbursement's not coming in. So we do get DOT funding for that, but we're not self-sufficient yet. It'll take time to get like a Rutherford County if that happens.
Are we charging anybody non-billable anything to ride?
We do not have fares as of this point. Most of the folks that are getting service fall under a category.
They're all billable, right?
With our grant funding, we have EdTap and we have
All things we can bill,
DOT.
get money, right?
That's right. So
So
that's
everybody's riding's billable, and we don't have.
there may be
ride.
some exceptions through grants and other things that the community is getting some service that is not tied to Medicaid or some of the other funding sources. But we continue to work on that. So continuing on, construction of Phase 3 of the Greenway started in the spring. You had the groundbreaking for that recently. We have a meeting tomorrow. That's essentially a monthly meeting with the city and the Trails Association to discuss that project and other projects. The board started holding a regular meeting with the DSS director several months ago, and that's, I think, shown a great success. I attend the supervisor meeting that is held twice a month and get a lot of good feedback from that department. Courthouse renovation is continuing. The new courtroom is complete. We are waiting on some furnishings before it is put into operation. So it should be complete in the next fiscal year, being FY20. Authorized expenditure of funds for the access road on the Universal property. Again, a lot of that is ARC funding through the federal government, but there is some local funds for design. Register of Deeds office was relocated to a building on Fort Street. It's a great space, much better access for those patrons.
And county owes zero on the building.
Right, it's owned outright, that's true. Human Resources, Finance, and Administration moved to the Administration Annex. The vacated space has been allocated to the Tax Assessing, Collection, IT, and Planning Department. You've seen some work ongoing as of today on building improvements here. The board executed a lease at the former Planet Fitness building for the Board of Elections. That is now being renovated. That building will allow for one-stop, the office operations, storage for the equipment, all in one location. I think we had 4 or 5 buildings for storage before. One-stop voting was in this room, and parking is at a premium anymore. So there were a lot of justifications. Move. Great enhancement out front of the courthouse. That's essentially complete for the Charters of Freedom. Also relocated the placement of the flagpole and the War Memorial. And so it looks great, and the dedication for that will be in a few weeks. Again, more of an administrative type thing, but it's helped. The board authorized a combination of facility maintenance and public works under the umbrella of public services, which should improve collaboration in those departments. They were nearby, but we've seen efficiencies created through that combination, and great management under Mr. DePoyster's lead. So, any questions about the accomplishments? We've had a very, very busy year. A lot of ongoing projects still with the courthouse and elections, and still looking for space for probation and a lot of different agencies, but I think we're cresting the hill. So this is hard to read up on the screen, but you do have it in front of you. This is our population group, more or less. I think DARE and maybe 1 or 2 others we take out that are in our population group, but have seasonal population and tax base that just aren't fair to compare to. So what we do is we just put this in front of you. This isn't a brag. It's not a woe is us or anything. It's just an illustration of how we stack up with the 12 counties above and 12 below population-wise, as far as our total employment, our general fund budget, property tax revenues, tax rates, etc. The page afterwards, where you see the average county population's a little bit higher than ours, about 47,000. Average county employment is 397. Average general fund budget is 53 million. Average tax rate is 71 cents. And so the green box is where it kind of gets important. We employ 32 fewer employees than the average. Our budget is 10.5 million below the average. The tax rate is 12 cents below the average. Property tax revenues are 7 million below average, and the general expenditure per capita is 210 below average. Again, this isn't a boast. It's not we're pitiful or anything, but just to show how we stack up with similar counties in population, which isn't always the best indicator, but it's one of the best to show how we compare. Again, where this is relevant and important, you don't have Burke and you don't, Rutherford may be in here, you definitely don't have Buncombe. A lot of times on the street or in Walmart or different places, citizens, taxpayers will come up to you and say, golly, I just got back from Buncombe County and they have XYZ, or they went to Burke County and they have these things. This is where you can have some context. Again, we don't have Burke and Buncombe, but we could to say Burke County is twice our population, they're twice our budget. Buncombe is in a separate category altogether, and I think most people get that. But sometimes it's hard to explain that we don't have the resources that some of our surrounding counties do, just because of population strictly and available tax base. Again, 24% of our land mass is owned by the federal government, and we receive $150,000 for that privilege. Again, we love the national forest, but we don't get a lot of revenue tax-wise out of that. So again, just provide some context where all things are not equal with our neighbors, and we have some limitations that they just don't, population and budget. So moving into next year's recommendation. This is a crude little drawing that could use some refinement, but it's something I came up with really just to illustrate, and you know this, but maybe more so for the public, how we ended up with this recommendation. And the state mandates can kind of go anywhere, but you know, the agency and department requests, the public requests that you get at the trade lot or Walmart or in this room, it doesn't matter. The state mandates all come to you and us here as staff, but go through the filter of what a board priority is. And again, we glean that through the year, through conversations, through board meetings, workshops, et cetera, to understand what you all want to do. And that's where we end up with this recommendation. So these haven't changed much from the current year, or maybe even years and years. These are good priorities for a county to have. And so you have increased public education funding as priorities, improve public safety through investments in emergency services in the sheriff's office, recruit and retain skilled county staff, improve county facilities, and invest in community and economic development. So there may be an outlier out there somewhere that doesn't necessarily fit in these areas, but this is what counties do, and this is what we understand to be your priorities. Again, I talked about process, I won't rehash it, but you have until June 30th to adopt the budget. There will be a hearing on June 10th. This document and the ordinance will be available online later today, and it is in the clerk's office for inspection as well. So getting into dollars and cents, these are, for the most part, the large impacts as far as expenditures. And I'll go through each of these. Again, these are tied back to your priorities. So for public education, you have essentially four line items that we have on our side for the schools. School operating, the supplement, capital outlay, and the one-to-one initiative, which is the laptops. You can see the recommendation there. Those for the school are a little over 2% for each. And then the community college operating, much smaller budget, but they're still around a little over 2% on that recommendation. So when you add all those together, that total is $330,701 of new money for next year. For public safety, you have one new deputy, you have 3 detention officers for the jail, and the county share, the sheriff had indicated that he would help share in that cost with some jail revenue, so that's about half of the actual cost.
What, if I might stop you just a second, what was his actual request for?
He requested 4 deputies and 4 detention officers.
Okay.
The EMS overtime adjustment, you have had for many years this item in here. We had a antiquated overtime compensation system, and I believe this is the 8th year maybe that we've been transitioned over to time and a half, and this would be the last year. And that would put us in line with almost all the other EMS departments in the state. Communications, there's a small adjustment there, and then building inspections, clerical. This would provide a clerical person there in that office that would allow that office to be open.
Is that with benefits and,
Yes.
okay, that's whole 9 yards.
Yes, sir.
It's got benefits in it.
Okay, and the next one, you have county facilities and equipment. Some of these are vehicles, the first four line items. Then you have the public defender's office space, and we talked about this a week or so ago. This is what we used to call 1P, the first level of the parking deck. This isn't something that we can finance because of the ongoing project, and so this will be paid out of next year's budget. Nebo water debt, this is for Stacy Hill Water Line. We have 3 more years on that payment. And then the watershed dams, you'll recall the representatives from Muddy Creek Watershed were here a few months ago and asked for more funding there. So this is a fairly sizable increase. It's going from 20 to 45,000 total, but they're reaching.
Is that a one-time allocation to do and take care of the need they've got?
I mean, it could be. There's probably there is in here increased maintenance costs, but you also have some issues with one of the dams that was.
Because they mentioned a specific dam to the board.
Yeah, that was.
They did. There's some survey costs that need to take place.
We're gonna be facing over the next few years, based on what I saw, we're gonna be facing a cost on these dams every year for the next, who knows how many years.
They're all, and Craig is here, who sits on that as well. They're about 50 years old.
You agree with that? You agree with that statement?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're starting to see maintenance issues with all the towns. Some of them are more serious than others.
So it's not gonna
Yes.
get any better, we're gonna be facing it every year for a long period of time, right?
Very true. So you see the total for the county facilities and equipment. And again, the big one there is the public defender space. County organization improvements, the board has expressed a strong preference to do as much as possible for salary adjustments for the staff. When we've looked at the market, we're behind most surrounding counties in a lot of key positions, if not all. Again, we try to ignore Buncombe County as much as we can because we just can't match what they do, but we try to at least be competitive with the Burkes and the Rutherfords and definitely our mountain neighbors. And so this $356,000 represents a 3.75% across the board increase. And then the various staff enhancements, these are a couple of positions that don't necessarily fit in some of the other categories. You have a couple of positions at DSS. You have, excuse me, one in administration, maybe 2 or 3 others. Tax.
Will you break that out? I mean, give us a breakout on who they are? I mean, as far
Sure,
as,
you've got.
I mean, you don't have to do it now, just in
Oh, okay.
writing. That
But
way we've
just
got
for
it.
the purposes, you have 2
Because, I
at
mean,
DSS.
You know, somebody looking at it and say staff enhancements, well, you know, they don't know what that is.
Right, so again, you've
We don't
got
either.
2 positions at DSS, you have 1 in administration, and you have 1 in tax assessing. I think that's all right. And we can revise this to break those out, that wouldn't be too difficult. And then community economic development, again, as we're transitioning, got an increase on transportation there. Waste disposal, when the economy is doing well, and it is, we see people are throwing away more garbage, and that's reflected in an anticipated increase in the general fund appropriation there of $183,000.
Let me
Sir.
stop you right there. What is our cost per ton to dispose of it? Fif-
to dispose, iron it all out.
Yeah,
That
It
the
would go-
Republic is charging us. Is that what you're
Yes.
asking?
60 you did.
No, it's to go up to $44.
That's correct.
44 per
That's
ton.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, their rate is going up July 1st. Now, so is ours on the commercial side.
Right.
60, you approved $60 per
We
ton.
approved a $10 increase on.
That's correct. And we're still not in breaking even.
No, no. And let's make this clear as well, too. Most of that does apply to the commercial use.
That's correct.
So, there's been question about that as far as the residential part of it, and it is commercial use. That $10 increase will apply mostly in that direction there.
In the residential, the $5 that people pay to go up the scale
Will stay.
stay in place. You have a health department increase, about 47,000. This is, folks have been on the board a while. We've had a couple of 3 or 5 year plans to increase the funding over a set amount of years. This is part of that plan. This is not reflective of the district's full request. So just to make that clear. Economic development, there's a large increase there. We have been working, honestly, with Baxter Healthcare on an incentive payment that is coming due next year, and we had it sort of thought out that we would do 90,000 over 3 or 4 years, and it's timing that's not worked out that way, and so that's it'll come out next year's budget. And then trail planning and maintenance. We've got 3 line items here. 5,000 for grant assistance, and then 25,000 each for planning for future trails, and then 25 for maintenance of existing trails. And some of that maintenance may be used for staffing, for someone to go open a gate or close a gate or something, but that's what we would look at. So this is the proposed budget. Current year, you see the 42,635, 745. Next year, it's proposed to be at 45, 442, 843, an increase of 6.58%. And the next,
I believe that is right in line with a question that I asked Allison about a year ago, isn't it? Yeah, I just noticed that.
and you see the historical growth of the budget. You can see going way back to around the Great Recession where things weren't so great for us. A couple of down years, and we've still been making up for that in the years since. The fiscal year 18, sort of an aberration where the decrease, and that is when the child care left DSS, that funding went straight to that vendor. Then the tax rate is proposed to stay at 58.75 cents for the coming year. And you see
So the big takeaway is there's no projected tax rate increase.
That's right.
Okay.
And you see again, we could probably leave this forever. The property tax revenue is always the largest source of revenue for counties. For us, it's projected to be at 51% next year. Social and community programs, that's typically interfund transfers, intergovernmental transfers. Sales tax, 14%. Public safety, you got EMS charges in there, jail revenue, et cetera. Then license permits and charges.
Let me ask
Yes, sir.
another question here. And I know we've talked about sales tax several times, but if we were to see the increased revenue from sales tax from folks coming from everywhere through McDowell County, that would offset that property tax.
Oh, my.
Revenue.
You know, Lynn, you spot on it. We tried, the board, we put it out to a vote, and by statute, we couldn't get out and, as far as pay any money from the county to endorse it or get signs made. But, you know, I still to this day don't understand. If I was a property tax owner, you're right, Lynn, I would favor a sales tax increase because that gets all your non-property tax owners. Gets everybody, like you said, Lynn, passing through this county, coming in for ball games, see their kinfolk. You know, that's a user-based tax. Whereas if you own property, it's sort of a penalty tax for owning the property.
Well, add to that, it's, you know, and Ashley just made mention this earlier, and it's something that's always kind of chapped me a little, the fact that the government owns almost 30% of our county.
Right.
There's a lot of tourists that come through this county to see our government property. We could get the tax base off of that.
We would see
It's
a
a big
wonderful
deal.
opportunity to decrease our property tax rate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And the board at any time can request the General Assembly to have that put on the ballot again, right? How does it work?
It has to be in a
Presidential?
election year when you have all of the polls open. There is some, there was a bill filed, I haven't tracked it lately, that would allow for some more clarifying language in the ballot. Because right now it just says, will you concur with a sales tax increase? It doesn't say what it's for or anything. And the bill language is still a little restrictive in that it says any public purpose or for school education purposes. So that's a little better than what's there now, where you have no chance in the ballot to say what you would like to do with it.
And you know, we were specific in what we were going to use it for. EMS, a new station. You know, folks, the taxpayers in next year or the year after budget is probably going to have a payment allocated for 30 years at about $800,000 to $900,000 a year, and that's $800,000 or $900,000 a year in a payment. We could put somewhere else if we could have gotten the sales tax revenue or off an increase in the sales tax. Short-sighted.
One of the, let's see, was it Old Fort Chief a little bit ago mentioned the increase in traffic on I-40 that they're having to respond to. If you've paid any attention, when the gas prices go up, traffic goes up.
That's right.
People are not stopping traveling. They're going. And they're coming through major highways, 221, 226, 70, and I-40 coming through McDowell County.
And they'll stop and buy Pepsi or get gas.
Yeah.
You know,
You'll spend $10 on chips and drinks if you got 3 kids in a convenience store. Easy.
Been there. And so this slide shows the neutral property tax rate. We're required to transmit that. The neutral rate is 53.52 cents. And so the next, you see significant revenue changes. The largest, of course, is with the revaluation. You see the increase in the property tax base. There's also some additional DSS revenue. EMS collections are anticipated to increase next year. Building permits are doing well, which is a great sign. Interest earnings are going to go up. Interest rates are going up, which is good and bad, but we'll take it on the earning side. And then sales tax. There is one, so you have Article 39, 40, 42, and then 44 that are relevant here. All but 44 have some level of sharing with other entities, either our service districts, which in most of our case is, if not all, are our fire and rescue districts. I'll talk about that in a second. Or the school system, or the city of Marion and the town of Old Fort. These are not all kept by the county. Article 44 is, and we anticipate a growth of about 19.5 there. Again, the fire and rescue sales tax shift, this goes back to distributing the sales tax revenues to service districts as required by statute. The Fire Commission held us harmless for this current year under that transition. And total, it equals about $230,000 that the commission will benefit, but we show a decrease of about $108,000 because sales tax is projected to increase, but we won't realize that full impact because of that change. That's hard to explain, but so total amount collected is increasing, but we still have to send some to them, so we're showing a loss on most of our sales tax, if that makes sense.
I hate to keep interrupting.
No,
but let me
that's why
make
we're here.
one more point. Even though that our property tax revenue is set to increase, once we approve this budget, we will be operating, at least for 6 months, under the old dollars. We won't see the benefit of that revenue until January 1 of next year. Is that correct?
You'll see it start
It's-
in July. The bills will go out in July, and
July.
you'll see
Okay.
it start rolling in.
Okay,
We
good.
we really push, and our staff does a great job to get those bills out as soon as possible. Not just for us, but also for the fire departments and rescue.
And if the board looks at the information Mr. Kane gave us, that would kick in next July 1. They start receiving.
Right, the other proposal
Other
Right.
proposal.
that's been talked about.
Okay.
And then one of the other priorities, it wasn't mentioned before now, but for maybe 7 or 8 years, there's been an ongoing appropriation of fund balance, essentially just to balance the budget for operation. And that, it's okay and fine and legal, but
It's over.
it can be avoided. That's great. So that this budget ends that. You will have, so don't be surprised in July or August when we have a budget amendment to appropriate fund balance for a specific project. Please don't be surprised. But we will have funds appropriated this year that will not be expended this year, and they'll be appropriated next year, and that's essentially a fund balance appropriation. So your annual expenditures for next year, that 45 million figure. In this presentation, a similar one I do for community groups. You see the big 3 pieces there that most counties do as far as education, public safety, and human services. And you see sometimes where whatever is in the lead or the largest piece of pie will change. But right now, human services is the largest at 26%, followed by public safety, which for us is mostly EMS and sheriff's office. And then education comes up with 23%. And then everything else, general government, keeps the lights on and things. Cultural and recreation is at 3%, and economic development is 3%. So a lot of times where there are requests to do new and innovative, creative things for great ideas and programs, it's hard to sometimes fit them in those little 3% pieces of pie because those big 3 pieces are so important. Again, we've talked about the education funding, but it's good to see it broken out, where you see the current expense increase of 2.26%, a very small increase on capital outlay. The one-to-one, again, is the laptop program, and that's going to stay at $100,000. And then the supplement is increasing as well. The school system, they account things a little bit differently than we do. So where they will count the supplement, the 336 there, in with the 8.8 million, but that's just the way we break it out for our purposes. And then the college, you have their current expense, capital outlay. The 33%, it seems like a lot, but it's just going from 60 to 80,000. Debt service is for the Ford Miller building on Baldwin Avenue and the Harold Smith building on the campus. And then the special projects is the textbook program for the Career and College Promise. Heading towards the end here, we used to have on this one, this is one of those old slides we've had for a while. We used to have the fire department transfers in here, but that came off 3 or 4 years ago. But the enterprise fund allocation probably need to be more specific these days now that we have at least 3. But this is the waste enterprise fund allocation. We were talking about before, there's a recommended appropriation of a little over $1 million of general fund monies to transfer into the waste fund. And again, just Mr. Abernathy did the same, and I'll keep doing it to point out this is unusual, a county our size, to do this. Most counties our size and most smaller have other methods of collecting funds for their enterprise funds. Most counties have, it's called a household user fee, availability fee. There's all different names and labels for it. It's essentially a trash tax that is assessed to homeowners, but most counties have that now. So
The only problem is here again, you miss out on that big old chunk of people who rent property, who live with their mom. I mean, you miss all that crowd. And that, I would be open to doing something if we could get all that crowd and make them pay their fair
you're
share.
doing that now through your property tax collection.
No, I know the property tax people are paying already. I'm talking about
Right.
them renter,
Sure.
I mean, all those people.
All their tax for the paying is on their Pepsis.
And through their rental and things and.
Oh, I'm a landlord. You can't count rent. You got ongoing expenses to keep a house out of that.
But most counties have that sort of formula. No one has figured out how to, there's no way to charge a renter's tax. There's just no way to, there's no way to do it. So it could be the same money that you're looking at here where, almost 2.5 cents of the 58 is going towards the waste general fund, enterprise fund. Other folks do it differently, but again, it's just pointing out where about $1 million isn't available. That's really the point. About $1 million is not available for appropriation for your sheriff's office, for your recreation, other things, because it's going to the landfill. Literally.
In my opinion, what we need to be doing, working on harder, is trying to figure out a way to cut the cost of the human services and to cut the cost of public safety. Yeah, that's our 2 biggest costs. That is our 2 biggest costs. That's what's killing us every year. And to cut that, I'm not saying to cut back on staffing or cut back on employees to do it, but figure out a way to stop some of the problems that are causing it. People and the taxpayers, they verbalize how they feel about some of this stuff. And a lot of people, in a lot of people's minds, we're taking care of people that won't work, and then also people that commit crimes. And we just keep paying, or they're saying that they just keep paying and paying and paying, and there's no relief. There's no change inside,
Your hope is that as you're able to increase your funding to the educational providers in the college and the school system, your hope is that will pay off with increased educational attainment and better choices that people that live here make. But
the reason for the high cost in these 2 areas are so tightly connected. Because-
They are. Unfortunately, you're stuck with funding those two, and you have no options, especially in the human service area, where a lot of it's federal rules. I mean, you can lobby Congress and legislature to adjust some of those things, but we're at the bottom of the totem pole of federalism. And so, again, you don't have a choice. We have no.
I know that.
You know that more than anyone,
I know it.
and that's hard to explain sometimes. But unfortunately, we're stuck holding the bag in both of those instances of court investments, jail investments, where I think everyone here would prefer to be redirecting that money towards schools, new school parks or whatever, but unfortunately those are the burdens you have.
And people ask me, and I know they ask these other commissioners, what are we doing to try to correct some of the problems here, some of the costs here? What are we doing? Spending more money in other areas? I don't know. I don't know what we're doing. It seems like we're doing nothing. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's disgusting to me to see where we're going and the amount of money that it's costing our taxpayers. And it seems like we're not moving forward at all in correcting any of the problems that these expenses cause. And that's all I've got.
Just a quick overview of some of the larger debt service items. Again, the Nebo water line will be paid off very quickly. That's Stacy Hill. Old Fort Senior Center is coming off in a couple of years. The jail courthouse renovation, a little more time to go on that one, definitely, as well as the courtroom addition that is ongoing now. Then, again, the next steps, staff would encourage you to have any workshops that you would like to have to talk about this recommendation. Your public hearing will be at the June 10th meeting, 5:30 in this room, and the board will need to approve the budget before July 1. So it's always been your budget, but now it's really in your hands, and I joke that I could have a trash can out here for y'all to toss this into, but hopefully not so much. But you now, as before, but especially now, have the opportunity to look at it and share thoughts with us as staff, and in a workshop setting to say where you would maybe like to redirect things, or if not, it's up to you.
Allison, what is the dollar amount in our fund balance? Can you ballpark?
Bring me a ledger with me, but,
Ballpark.
we've spent, I would say, available for appropriation, $7 million.
Okay.
Is that?
Feels about right.
Yeah.
Any questions about maybe the process, or I know you probably don't want to get into the details at this point, you want more time to digest it, but if you have detailed questions, that's okay too. That's why we're here.
You presented your budget, we received your budget, and then we'll go in there and
The red
read
pen.
again. And I don't know a red pen, but I mean, just commissioners can state anything they want to see or not see, and if you have anything, get to Ashley. I mean, call him, commissioners, and tell them your concerns or things you like or dislike, or give him some more guidance and staff, and then we'll get together and we won't have any conferees and have the two parties meet. We'll just get here and talk it out again, just finalize and hammer it down, and try to adopt it June 10th. One question to the board on the two fire tax requests we heard today. We're going to do that the 10th too, or what's the pleasure,
Does
board?
that give you time?
I think I don't think I would be in town DOT.
If I may ask, Ms. Bell, the requirement on those rates, if it's not by May 31st or whatever.
Does that affect their vehicle? You said it affects something earlier.
Before they get the notices out.
The DMV needs to have time to place that rate on their billings for July. So if we wait until the 10th, my fear is we're going to cause a backlog on the July renewals, or the renewals that go out for July. Our goal has always been to have that rate set by May the 31st on the districts, but if we can't make it, we can't make it.
So what's today's date, y'all? Today's 29.
30.
May
30.
Payday.
Oh, we'd already thought about meeting on the 6th, and she canceled that one, we'll just meet on the 6th like we had thought we were going to for E&O Roll.
I'm
I'm for that, and that'd be what.
No, we gotta have a hearing for the budget.
Yeah.
Right.
Before we adopt
We
it.
have that, we need to have that first.
But you could vote on the service district rates at that point and give some feedback on the budget at that point.
The 6th.
Do you have a preferred time? You do have an invite for something at 1 o'clock that day at the Carson House, by the way. But if you'd like to meet the same time, 8:30. The 6th.
I'll be flexible, whatever's good with the
I'm
rest
good
of
with
us.
whatever.
There's a World War II.
You got
Barry
a
won't
paper
be-
in front of you. You got a paper in front of you.
Barry won't be here for either one.
It's World War II.
Yeah. What?
When does school get out?
The 11th.
Oh, so he won't be here.
Oh, that's fine.
He won't be here for the
It's the
end day or
seventh,
morning.
June 7th.
I think so. Mr. Carroll's schedule.
I can do it in the morning.
Y'all tell me, I'll be there.
Let's do it in the morning. We'll do one more
6th,
morning.
On the 6th.
Yeah.
6th.
Okay.
8:30.
8:30.
We can recess until then.
Okay.
Here.
I'll make a motion to recess until the 6th of June.
Okay. Second discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign.